This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors. I am your host, Erica Lance. With me today is my amazing co-host, Valerie Willis.
I'm the favorite.
Cheered for herself, which is weird. And our guest today is the amazing Dana Ridenour. Woo! Woo! Who literally has the best background ever. So if you're listening and not watching, you should absolutely watch this podcast on YouTube. Okay. Dana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to this podcast all week, mainly because I like to drink wine.
Yeah, yep. I'm telling you, this is the entire reason I do this, because I get to drink with cool people. And I have a podcast, so nobody can say anything to me about drinking with cool people all the time. I'm like, listen, I do this professionally.
Hey, that's the best kind of job.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking then. I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Dan, who I have a granddaughter. She's 1 year old, but he got me this mug that says other grandmothers and me.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. But because it's cold up here and rainy and foggy right now, I am drinking mainly Kahlua that I put some coffee in and some creamer with a little chocolate syrup and pretended like I was drinking coffee. I'm doing quotation marks because
Lots of quotation marks.
I have a new puppy and I'm getting no sleep. So that's what I'm doing today. Val, what are you drinking today?
Stayed up late doing a revision, so I am having coffee with Bailey's.
Oh,
and a
wow.
cup that I believe I inherited from you that says I don't spew profanities. I enunciate them clearly like a fucking lady.
You did get that.
Okay, I can already tell this is my kind of podcast.
So Dana, what are you drinking?
Well, it's kind of foggy and overcast here, and I tried to lighten things up. So I've got some Prosecco going. I threw in a little fruit. I'm just trying to
my goodness.
Yes.
I love that. You were super fancy.
I'm super fancy. That's it.
Yeah, we have these ridiculous coffee cups, and you're like, let me just pull out the Prosecco with some fruit in it. Let me show you.
The Prosecco, throw some blueberries in there, make it look all pretty.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
I as well have a brand new puppy, so if things go to hell in a handbasket, you'll know why.
No,
We're all in
totally.
the puppy club.
Yeah, no, I think Val's got a new puppy too. Mine is right now supposed to be sleeping in a room above me. So if you guys hear barking, that just ended badly. So yeah,
well,
I can hear barking.
I have the most wonderful husband in the world who's over there ready to grab him and take him out at the moment's notice if he starts carrying on. So.
Very cool. Mine's got a little separation anxiety. So when she goes into her crate, it takes her a little bit to self-soothe. I actually had to buy this stuffed puppy that I put a heating pack in and a little heartbeat thing and it works way better.
I have one too. Yes.
Yeah. It's like a snuggle puppy thing.
Snuggle puppy.
The things we do for our dogs. It literally has a heartbeat thing that beats Val and like thumps in the stuffed animal, so it feels like a heartbeat. And then it's got a little heating thing that you shake up and it lasts for 24 hours. And it makes the stuffed animal feel like a warm cuddle thing.
Wow.
It's the best invention ever. Somebody told me about it. I thought it was crazy. And we bought it. And this dog has slept through the night. And I think it's because of Snuggle Puppy. He loves Snuggle Puppy.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, weirdness. Now that we're done talking about puppies for a moment, Val's like, I'm going to Google this so I can order one immediately so I can sleep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Dana, what do you write? Yes. Talk about what you write for a moment.
Well, the 3 books that I have out right now are part of a series called the Lexi Montgomery series, and they're about a female FBI agent who works undercover. My background is I was an FBI agent for almost 21 years. And out of the 21 years, I spent about 13 years working as an undercover operative. So when I started to write the books, the character of Lexi Montgomery, who's my protagonist, came right out of my journals. So everybody always says, is Lexi you? Well, she came out of my journals. I'm not sure that she's exactly me, but she did come out of my journals. So that's where those 3 books came from. They're they fall into the mystery or thriller category. And they do follow up on, I never set out to write a series, but they sort of all follow up on one another. So they kind of evolved into a series.
That's very cool. When did you start writing? So first of all, FBI agent, that's amazing. We're going to have to touch on that because I saw Val's eyes light up and I'm like, you cannot use her for research on the podcast. So calm down. That's not what this is about. Nice try though. So when did you decide to write a book? When did you go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write a book.
Well, I started writing the first novel the end of my career. I was probably 1.5 to 2 years from retirement. And the reason I started writing it was I kept journals for my undercover work, and I kept them hidden in the ceiling panel of my undercover apartment. So when we were in the middle of a transfer, I started looking through all my journals, and that's when I started writing the first book. And I never really set out to write it for the public. I started out writing it for my mother, more or less, because Mom, all these years of me working undercover, never really knew what I did for a living. I mean, she knew I was undercover and she knew like I was in California and that was it. She didn't have any idea about the groups or what I was actually doing. So I thought, how fun would this be to write a manuscript, let my mom read it? And, you know, that's kind of where I started with it.
Oh.
And I entered it into a writing contest when it was in manuscript form and nobody had seen it. I hadn't even shown it to my husband yet at that point, and it won best novel. So the judge actually hunted me down and he said, look, you know, I've heard this whole story about you writing this for your mother and that's silly. You have to write this to have it published. So that was the start of the writing journey, was because of a writing contest that it won. And I thought, well, you know, maybe he's right. It was kind of fun. And at that point, I went right into the second book. I enjoyed writing. It was a good outlet for me. So it was a good stress reducer. I really enjoy writing.
I think that's awesome. And that's amazing. So I also, you know, it's interesting because I think some of us on some of our characters take parts of our lives. I know I did that under my other name I write under, which is Dahlia Lance, which is humorous erotica. I took pieces of experiences that I had or friends had and wrote it into the characters and stuff like that. So when you're writing, I just have to ask, since this is from your background, I know it's a fictionalized version of you. It's not, this wasn't written as a biography, so it's not you and your, you know, thoughts. What was that like going back through those experiences?
Well, when I was writing the first book, I had no idea that it was actually going to be as therapeutic as it was. I was at the end of the career and I'd kind of come out of an undercover mission that went bad. And I didn't realize at the time that I probably needed actual therapy, but I started writing the book and pouring the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions out on the page. And it was therapy, but I didn't recognize that until later in the process, I guess. But it was completely a therapeutic thing, and good and bad. I mean, I was reliving a lot of the stuff that was hard, but I was also kind of using it to put it behind me as well. So yeah, it was a very interesting writing experience with the first.
Oh yeah.
I would think so, because man, and you, as you go through it. So let me ask you, when did you start writing the first book?
I was still working as an FBI agent. I was just writing on weekends and kind of off time. Probably the last 1.5 years, I was still working, 1.5 years, 2 years maybe, when I was still on the job, but it was just a part-time thing, you know, weekends, just something to entertain myself more or less.
Wow. So when did you finish the first one and send it in and get people hunting you down, which just doesn't sound good for an FBI agent, but in this case it was.
Well, I actually did something really crazy. And of course, now as a more experienced author, I realize it was crazy, but I finished the book and had it with the publisher, and it has to go through, all my books have to go through pre-publishing review. the FBI has to review the manuscripts before I'm allowed to publish. So I had all that done before I retired, and I retired and launched the book the same day. Now I look back now and I think, what had that, you know, I should have taken 6 months. I should have built up my publicity. I should have built up my platform. I didn't do anything correctly. I just retired and launched that book the first day and went out on a book tour.
Well, Dana, that's one of the misconceptions I think about the industry, right? There's this, you should do it this way, you should do it that way, but everyone, and what are we on, 400 episodes deep? And I can tell you not one story has ever been the same about that first book, that first publication, and it amazes me. And it just shows how ready you were to transition into that next step, right? From FBI agent to FBI writer kind of mode. That's pretty amazing, actually. And don't knock yourself, because you did something that most people, I don't think, have the strength to be able to transition and pick up and keep going without missing a beat.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because, you know, so many people are like, you did what? And I, you know, but it was probably the best thing for me too, because, you know, I'd gone from a career where for nearly 21 years, I was constantly in motion. I was going every day with something different. And I'm not sure I would have adjusted as well to retirement, you know, to go from 90 to nothing. So the fact that I jumped into a second career and I was going 90 to 110, that actually helped me, I think.
Absolutely.
Well, I agree. I think it does help because, you know, I think retirement, and I always said, coming back from an HR background for most of my life, I always think that you can decide what you want to be when you grow up over and over again. But I don't think you can decide to do nothing. I think if you leave a position, retire, whatever, if you don't do something with your retirement, then honestly, I think you end up dying quickly, because you have to have something that you sort of bounce into from that point in time. So now you're 3 books in. How long did it take you to get all 3 books? So how long has this journey been so far?
Well, I published 3 books in less than 5 years. So I retired in 2016, and that was, of course, when Behind the Mask came out. 2017, Beyond the Cabin came out, and 2019, Below the Radar came out. So I hit those 3 books at a really fast stride. And then I decided to, for my 4th book, I decided to step away from the FBI genre for a bit and write a different kind of book. So this book has taken me much longer than the thrillers have taken, because it's a character-driven novel versus the plot-driven that I'm used to writing. So I've had to change gears in a lot of ways. And so that book is in its final revisions. I'm hoping to have it done, and maybe with an agent or something in the next few months. So
what is that? What is that book? Tell us about your jump.
Tell us more.
Let's go on the jump with you. Where did you go?
What genre did you shift into now? Now I'm curious.
Well, I kind of shifted into more literary fiction / adventure. I say it's The Big Chill meets Wild, because it is about a group of friends who grew up together. They were childhood friends, but then as adults, they all kind of went separate ways. But they're brought back together in their 50s because of a tragedy, and they decide they're going out on the Appalachian Trail to kind of heal. But when they get out there, they're all going out for their one friend. But when they get on the trail and they're spending all this time together, they realize they all have baggage. By the time you hit your 50s, you have a lot of baggage. You know, they're dealing with divorce and betrayal and loss and love and a little bit of everything out there. So there's nothing like those childhood friends. I mean, even if you hadn't seen somebody in 15 years, when you're brought back together, there's just something special about that bond that you have when you're 12, 13, 14 years old that comes back out, I think, when you're an adult. So it's been fun to write, because although it has a lot of serious moments, it also has a lot of comedy, because they're not real experienced backpackers, and anybody that's going to try to hike 2,000 miles backpacking is going to have some crazy adventures. So that's why I say it's literary fiction, but it's also kind of an adventure novel too, because it does have some excitement and some fun, and some comedy. So it has a little bit of everything.
Oh, that's fun.
No, that's awesome. I love that. And I love that you're doing it from that perspective, and it's very true because we all do. I was actually talking to somebody earlier today. I'm going to be 50 this year. So I was talking to somebody earlier today, and there's always those friends that you run into, but like it seems no time has passed, but you forget everything that's built up for them and no time has passed, right?
Right.
So that's very, very cool. So what is, now that you've started, like you did this as sort of a hobby, stress reliever, you've now released, you're going into your fourth book. What is your kind of goals? Like what are you like, I'm an author now. I'm going to like what
Take over the world.
Yeah. What is it that you're looking to do?
Well, it has turned into the most wonderful second career I could have ever asked for. I mean, I love meeting with people. I love doing author talks. I enjoy book clubs. When I get invited to come to a book club, I never say no, especially if they're, driving distance for me so I can be sitting in somebody's living room. Usually there's good food and there's wine involved. And what better thing to sit around and talk about books with readers, with real readers who want to get to the bottom of everything. And so I love book clubs, and it's just turned into this wonderful thing. I mean, I love when a book comes out, the excitement of the book tour is probably one of the most exciting things. And so I want to get this fourth book out because I'm excited to go back on the road and get back with some of the book clubs that I've met with. These book clubs are very serious too, boy.
Oh yeah.
When you go for one book, they expect you for the second book and the third book, and then, they're hounding me for the fourth one. So even though it's a change in genre, book clubs don't care. They're ready.
No. And I tell people all the time, especially when I have new authors, I said, reach out to book clubs. I said, they will support you. They will preach you. They become a street team almost. And I always encourage authors, support your local book clubs, because they really do make a difference in your career, but also they help motivate you, like you said, they're already asking, they're very hungry all the time. And that's where you get another mystery writer or another writer and be like, hey, and you put them in front of the hyenas a little bit, like, here, you can gnaw on this person's book while I write over here for 5 minutes.
And that's exactly right. And it helps your other fellow authors, especially indie authors. We need to support each other. And so if you can, say, hey, look, I've got the perfect author that she's great. She loves to sit and talk to people. And those book clubs will, like you said, they're hungry. They'll be inviting your best friend or whatever, the next author. But, it's just, you're right. When I had I think it was my book launch on my third book, I looked out into the audience, and we were doing it in conjunction with a movable feast. So everybody was there having lunch and the whole thing. And I looked out into the audience and I could see my book clubs. I could see like a group of 12 here, a group of 10 here, a group of 6 there. And it was just tables full of my little book clubs from North Carolina to Georgia. It was crazy. They will drive to see you as well. So it was such a heartwarming experience to know that you have that kind of fans that support you. And I just love them. And anybody that doesn't support the book clubs as an author is just crazy, because it's such a great source of inspiration and support.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I have to ask you so when you first, because you decided, of course, to do this all in rapid fashion and, leave the FBI, go publish books. What was the thing that was the most surprising to you when you published your book?
I think it was just the support that I was getting from the audiences. I was a brand new author. I didn't expect, I knew the FBI has always been kind of an intriguing subject matter, but I wasn't really ready for the groves of people that came to every author talk and showed up for the library talks. I wasn't ready for that. I'd go into a library and expect 6 people and I'd have 56 people. And it was like, wow, where do all these people come from? And so I think that was kind of it. One of the things was just, and the sheer amount of work, I think too, is another surprise. I kind of thought, okay, you get this book out there and it's done. And
It's just beginning.
Oh, my heavens. Writing the book is the easy part. Writing the book is the easy part. Nobody believes me when I say that.
Oh,
But
I
once the
believe it.
book comes out, oh my gosh, you got marketing and promoting and well, you know how it is. That's what you do. So it's I was a little surprised at the sheer amount of work, because I think I really do work harder now than I did as an agent. And I hope the FBI is not listening.
Well, no, I think that it's a different kind of work because, you know, I say all the time, when you become a published author, you become a celebrity, right?
Mhm.
That's what you are. You're a celebrity. And I don't think people think like that. And I don't think people know what it's like to be on all the time. And you know, when I say be on, I mean, you're talking, you're presenting yourself, you know, as I say that as I cough and stuff on my own podcast, but like you get on, you're having to engage, you're having to monitor the audience, you're having to do whatever, you're thinking about how you're answering the questions and that sort of thing. Where I think with jobs, you get to a point where you're more familiar with the motions of the job, regardless of how busy the job gets and how much, you know, things happen with the job. You're used to going into those phases where you're not used to being on all the time and being looked at and being listened to, and you know what I mean, having people come up and interact with you, and you know, that
Especially
sort of thing.
when you flip to where the business is you, not like you work for a business, you are the business, you're the brand, and your books are your product. It is definitely a very different vibe. And yeah, it can be overwhelming, I think, for a lot of authors when they finally, like you said, when you finally get the book out, everyone assumes, okay, it's done with, I've done that part, I'm good to go. And it's like, no, baby, now you have to let people know the book is there. They
Yeah.
don't know unless you're loud enough to tell everyone, right? Because I used to work for a couple of publishers, and they'd come into my office as the typesetter, and they're like, Val, this author's upset because their book's not selling. Do you know why? And I said, well, how much marketing have they done? Have they told anyone they've published a book and put it on Amazon? Well, they just put it on Amazon. There's that millions of products on Amazon. How am I supposed to know what to search for to find their book?
Right, I know. And I think a lot of authors, especially first-time authors, don't realize that's the case. They think, well, I'm going to publish this book and then my publisher is going to do all this. They're going to set up a book tour. They're going to do this and this and this and this, and I'm going to be rich and famous. And that is not the case. Not the case at all. You know, and if an author isn't prepared to toot their own horn, do their own marketing, do their own promoting, well, then they're going to be like a lot of the indie authors, and they're just going to, you know, they're just going to die on the vine.
Yeah, no, and that's the unfortunate thing, is that you do have to talk about yourself, right? And you're not prepared for it, and it is word of mouth. But I think that has actually been the case for even longer than people realize. Obviously, you could go into a bookstore and see what their new releases were and stuff like that. But how many books when we were even younger did our friends go, oh my gosh, have you read blah, blah, right? It's word of mouth, like finding it that way, that sort of thing. Yes, there's always new releases in the library and there's all this stuff like that you can do. But even in the bookstores, like you walk into Barnes and Noble, which I'm so glad they're changing everything, and they're like not just doing whoever is wooing the book buyers, and they're doing it by what the demand is of the store. But it can even be overwhelming if you see all the books that are new releases. It's like, where do you go? How do you find what you want? You tend to go to the section that you tend to read, fantasy, romance, thriller, like you go do that. So I think authors forget that sometimes too, that even if you are in the stores, that doesn't mean people are finding your books. Yeah, you're in the stores, but you still have to kind of point people and go, hey, those are my books over there.
Right,
So,
right. Because especially in a store as big as a Barnes and Noble, chances are you're not going to be out on the end displayed. You're going to be buried on the shelf someplace. So if you don't send people, that's one of the things I always do when I do my book tours is I never go someplace where I don't have some type of connection. Everybody's like, well, I do book tours, but I'll have 2 people show up. I'm like, well, what was your connection to that city? Oh, well,
Yeah.
I just I don't have one. I said, well, you can't do that. You have to go to places where you have a personal connection. You've lived there. Your cousin lives there. Somebody lives there. And that's how I started out too, is I went to cities where I had a connection. Maybe it was my first office as an FBI agent, someplace where you know that you have a base and you can draw from that base, because that base is going to go out and talk to people. And you're going to bring in a crowd. So, if I just decided I was going to go to Detroit, well, I've never even been to Detroit in my life. I wouldn't have anybody show up in Detroit. If I go to Mobile, Alabama, I can fill the place up. It's just, it depends on, there's just so many first time mistakes I see people make that I've made too.
Right. No, but this is great advice. I don't think we've ever discussed this particular aspect of when you are planning a book tour, book launch. You like, people are like, oh, all it is my family and friends. Well, you have to start someplace, right? And
Right.
like you said, if I went to Dallas, Texas, I know my cousin Ginny would be whistling people and corralling people into a bookstore over there, because I know she supports me. I mean, every time I have a book release, my cousins are hitting me up on the family Facebook page group that we have, and they're like, which books have you released recently? I need to buy them, Val. Can you sign them and send them to me? Your family and friends can be your street team just as much as anyone else in your book clubs. But yeah, that's such great advice. Like, don't be afraid to use your family and friends to help you pull readers closer to you. And then you can let the book do the talking at the point a little bit.
Exactly. And, sometimes I'll have people that say, well, how come you've never done a book talk or a book signing in, say, Charlotte or whatever? I say, well, how many people can you get me? Let's talk about this. What's an independent bookstore in your neighborhood? Let's talk about doing this. And how many people and how many neighbors do you have? and if it's going to work, sure, man, I'll jump in the car, drive to Charlotte.
So because you were previous FBI and you were undercover, what was that like? I know you've been asked that question a million times, so let's ask the million-time question.
Well, one of the reasons that I did want to actually write the book and turned into books was to show the actual psychological impact of working a long-term undercover case. So that's what I did mostly, is long-term deep cover cases. And there's a difference between just working undercover. And I did a lot of drug buys where I could go in and, buy drugs, sell drugs, whatever I was doing. And I was in and out in a day, 2 days, maybe a week. But when I did the long-term deep cover stuff, that's 24/7. That means you go under and you don't come back out. You are under completely. You have an alias driver's license, alias passport, alias apartment. Your car is in your alias. There's nothing that has your real name in it, and you are under. Your family can't contact you. Your friends can't contact you because you have undercover phones and undercover computers, and you can't have your real identity mixed with any of this stuff. So that's the difference between the long-term stuff with what I did and what we called quick hits. So I did 2 long-term undercover cases. The first one lasted 4 years. Cool. And so when I say long-term, I mean long-term. And the second one lasted 3 years. So this is a long time to be undercover. And everybody watches television movies and thinks, oh, it's so exciting. It's such a Hollywood lifestyle. The truth is, it's a very lonely lifestyle. It can really get to you. I mean, the first time when I was undercover completely by myself, and I didn't have any kind of support other than my contact agent, who was great, fantastic contact agent. But that person is the person you kind of meet with to make sure you're okay. He or she is your tether to reality, but it's not somebody you can hang out with. It's usually another either FBI agent or local police who you're meeting 35, 40 minutes away, where nobody actually sees you meeting. And so that's not a buddy. The only people you're hanging out with are targets. And so after a while, your mom can't call you, your cousin can't call you, you can't talk to your sister. It starts to weigh on you. And so I will say that 4-year stint that I did completely by myself, there were days where I woke up and, you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I was single. I didn't have any kind of relationships. I wasn't going out on dates, because even though I could have, as long as it wasn't a target or related to the case, I could have dated. But how would I have explained at the end of 4 years, oh, by the way, my name's not really so-and-so, and I'm actually an undercover FBI agent. I'd like this relationship to continue. I mean, they're going to be like, you've lied to me for 4 years and you think we're going to have a relationship, you know? So it wasn't even worth trying, you know? So I just kept to myself and worked my cases. And, you know, it's a very
That's
lonely
an
existence.
awesome premise to a romance novel.
Well, actually, it's kind of funny that you say that, because there is a little romance in this, because in between my long-term cases, I went back to Virgin Islands, which is where I was stationed at the time as an overt agent. And I hadn't been on a date in a long time, right? You know, and there was a really handsome FBI agent sitting beside me that had been transferred in while I was gone doing this undercover. And really nice fellow. We hit it off. We became friends. And then, you know where this story's going. We became a lot more than friends, and we started dating. And I really felt like for the first time in my life, I had a relationship that was going somewhere, and this was really going to be a great thing. Well, then the FBI called and said, hey, we need you back in California, you know, another undercover mission. And I talked it over with my boyfriend, and he was also an undercover agent with the FBI, because you can't just do undercover with the FBI. You have to go through the training and everything. So he was a certified agent as well. So I kind of I found out the case called for 2 full-time undercover agents. So I went to him and said, how would you feel about moving to California and becoming a vegan and living in a commune? You know, and I thought he was going to tell me, you know, I was crazy, because he's worked all this like hardcore undercover stuff. And he kind of looked at me and he said, well, it sounds like fun. It sounds like an adventure. Let's see if we can sell it. So we went to the FBI and said, how would you feel about a couple playing a couple? Well, just you know, so first of all, the case agent and the contact agent all thought this was a great idea. Management said, this is a crazy idea. You're a romantically involved couple. You're going to be working 24/7. You'll probably kill each other. So we kind of pushed and ended up getting approval to do this. So my boyfriend and I went undercover, and we did this crazy case, which is the premise for the 3rd book. And we worked together, and it was fantastic. We became each other's lifeline, our backup. We were there together. And so the good news in all this is he's my husband now. So I said,
Very cool. I was like, please tell me this has a happy ending. I was with you, and I'm like, if this doesn't have a happy ending, I'm gonna be super sad.
he is that most wonderful person that's over there keeping the dog quiet for me. So no, we had a very happy ending. And we've decided, after 3 years of working that kind of intensity as undercover agents together, that marriage would be a cakewalk for us. So
I would imagine so. But
yeah.
That's incredible. And at least you didn't have to do the 2nd mission alone. And that must have been just a relief off your own shoulders mentally, you know, and things like that. My hat goes off to you, because I couldn't imagine trying to live as someone else for that long.
Well, and you're exactly right. It was such a different experience to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, and to be there night and day, and to have that person. So if you started to slide down the rabbit hole a little bit, and like some of the stuff you were thinking about or doing, you had that person to kind of catch you, a safety net that said, you know, let's think this through a little bit. Maybe we don't need to go there, or whatever. So, and it wasn't lonely. It was just it was a fun experience. It was great. There was a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, and it does weigh on a relationship. I could see why the FBI management was a little hesitant in saying yes to the assignment, because I could see where that could have gone bad really easily. But because of our personalities, we felt like we could do it, and we wanted to try. And we spend, even as retired people, we spend a lot of time together. And some of my other married couples are like, oh my gosh, how come you and Bill can spend so much time together? I'd kill my husband if I had to spend that much time together. And I was like, well, you kind of have to remember where we came from. We're used to spending a lot of time together, and we have a little bit of separation anxiety when we're not.
Oh, that is such a sweet story, though. That is really awesome. What was his thought when you finally went, hey, so I wrote this book? What was, because
he is fantastic. Bill was my first round editor. His grammar is impeccable. I think it's probably because he came from, his mother was a school teacher, his sister's a school teacher. So he kind of has that, that I don't know, that the
It was
grammar gene or
in his
whatever.
head, yes.
So he's my first round editor. I give him everything before it ever goes to a professional editor, just because, he saves me a lot of embarrassment. So he reads everything first. And I have to say, he's an excellent first round editor because he doesn't sugarcoat anything. If he thinks something's not working, then he's not going to say, "Oh, honey, this is wonderful," like your mother does. He'll come right out and say, "This doesn't work for me," or "I'm not following this," or "I think you should go deeper here." He's great. And 95% of the time I take his advice. There's a few times where I'll kind of say, "Oh, I know I like it like this," but I will have to say probably 95% of the time, whatever he suggests is usually the right direction to go. So he's a great first round editor. He's been incredibly supportive through this whole, with the first book, second book, third book. He's always there to help. I always call him my Sherpa because he's the first person to lug in all the books. He's also the person that will be running around taking pictures for me at events so I can have something to put on social media. He's been wonderful. The funny thing was, the first book came out, the second book came out, and then he was kind of joking one day and kind of not joking when he said, "How come I never made the books?" And I was like, "Well, honey, guess what? You're in the third book. That's what the whole third book is about." So,
My husband made me change my dedication. He saw the dedication in the first book. He goes, "What is this?" And I said, "It's a dedication to you and the kids." And he says, "But all it says is husband. I want my name in here because if you divorce me and get a better husband, I."
you say, "Well, that was a backup plan in case, I get another husband."
Gone.
That's so funny.
Yeah, he was very, very touchy about that.
Yes. Well, I don't think a lot of people realize just how much work the spouses do. I mean, they do a lot of work, whether it's going to events and helping to carry books or just keeping the house going when you're off doing book tours. There's just so many things that he handles behind the scenes that nobody knows about,
Well, that and the writing process. I had that whole conversation with my other half this morning, my boyfriend, because I have a book due, and actually do, unlike, we're publishers and writers, but normally I can be like, for my timeline because I'm in charge of all of it. But this time I actually have a deadline, and he's like, "So what is your writing schedule? Because you need to have this to get this done." And then how can he accommodate around the writing schedule? Because when you're writing, as much as we don't like it to be a solitary thing, and maybe you could bring your laptop in front of other people, but you're in the thing. It's not like you're having a conversation in writing. Like, that's not happening, right?
Right. Exactly.
There might be authors out there that can do that, but even the most social, I do love writing in environments where there's a bit of noise and stuff, background noise, but I'm not having conversations and typing my entire novel. I'm typing my novel. And, this is hours and hours and hours of time. And you need somebody who can be supportive and be willing to know that your attention's not going to be on them or the household or whatever during that time period, that you have to be able to go turn off the phone or whatever. At least for me, I got to turn off the phone because man, it's very distracting, and just write. And so having anyone, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a roommate, whether it's a sibling, whoever your support group is, that is there to help you do all the other stuff besides writing or talking about your writing or promoting your book, is huge.
It is. And my husband's also my caffeine dealer too. So he keeps the coffee coming, and he knows, I mean, if I've been in there and I'm on hour 4, hour 5, he knows I'm in the zone. So sometimes he will slide coffee in front of me and I won't even know that the door's been open, and I'll just look down, there's a hot cup of coffee. And so he bought me this Ember cup from, I don't know if it was Starbucks or where it came from, but it was like this Ember cup that keeps the coffee hot. So, because sometimes I'll get writing and then my coffee's sitting there and it's, cold. So he bought me the Ember cup to keep it warm and hot for me. So he's my caffeine dealer. He keeps it coming.
My kids bought me a Yeti cup, a Yeti coffee cup for Mother's Day. And I started setting alarms to remind me to take a break to eat. But if I've muted my phone because I'm focused, he'll get the alarm on his side because we share a calendar, and next thing I know, I have food sliding in front of me.
See, the perfect
So
guy.
it does help.
Right.
And he'll sometimes ask me, I said, hey, I gotta focus today. He goes, okay, what do I need to get done on behalf of you today while you do that? So it can be a team effort sometimes.
It's
So,
very much a team effort, I think. Yeah, especially I know on my side it is, because if I had somebody that was demanding my time or didn't understand, it would be hard. It'd be very difficult. But yeah, he's very understanding of the time commitment. And like I said, just keeping that caffeine coming all day long is a huge help.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Whatever it is that keeps you motivated. Okay, let's talk a little bit about when you put your book out, like the first reviews and stuff you got. What was that like?
That was so exciting. I told myself, oh, well, don't read reviews because you're going to get your feelings hurt. And I couldn't help myself. Of course, as soon as that first book comes out, you're sitting there watching Amazon all the time and Goodreads. What's coming up? What's coming up? Yes, refresh, exactly. And I was blown away at the wonderful things that people said. And it made me feel so good that people were reading the book and then taking time to review the book. Because, just because you read a book, doesn't mean you're going to actually take that extra few minutes to go write a review. And so for so many people to have jumped on and write reviews for me, I appreciate every single review. Even if it's from the first book, I just have a whole bunch of new reviews on the first book that just came in the last month. And I tried to tell everybody thank you, because it does mean a lot. People think, well, does it really mean that much? Yes, it does. It means so much to an author to get those reviews. And I was blown away. And that's one of the things that keeps you motivated to keep going. It really is. You see people that they write this wonderful stuff and I can't wait for the second book. I love this book so much. That makes you want to write the second book or the third book or the fourth book. So yeah, reviews mean so much. And I try to, occasionally you're going to get the review from a disgruntled person, that maybe I had contact with as an FBI agent.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Tell us about that, because
yeah, the books deal with the extremist population, the animal rights extremists and things like that. So every once in a while you'll get somebody that's going to get online and say something, chances are they haven't even read the book. Because if they read the book, they would realize that I have a great respect for activists. I don't have people are like, oh, you hate activists. I'm like, no, I don't. I love activists. I don't like the people who are building incendiary devices and burning things down and blowing things up. That's where I was working as an undercover agent to prevent that kind of stuff. But if you're going to go out and try to change the laws and get, I love animals. I love animals. So I have no problem with activists. And and if they would have read the book, they would have probably seen that come through in the book.
Well, and you know what? You can't. So two parts to that it's funny you say that, because I write humorous erotica under Dahlia Lance, right? And I've maybe fictionalized some past experiences. Hypothetically, maybe somebody has read the book and been like, wait, is that me? That may or may not have gone well, because not every story is, a sexy story. Some are kind of cringeworthy stories. The look on Val's face speaks volumes because she's read the book. And so it's very funny when you write a book of any kind and somebody is in the book, right? And they go, wait, is this me? Is this depicting me? Or some variation or some part of a story? And I think it's very funny to have people's reactions, but also separately, I've gotten reviews on some of my horror stuff and things like that, where, I write not happy endings. And, I've had reviews where people are like, Erica Lance supports suicide. And I'm like, oh, did you read the story? You didn't. You just started spouting nonsense, right? You didn't get it. People will not get it. As much as we'd love everybody to understand our intention and what we wrote and things like that, they won't get it. You can pretty much count on people messing things up regularly in the actual thing, because, welcome.
I've heard this a couple of times. And it gets to the point where I have a 1-star review on Honeycombing Sleeping with Sasquatch, saying it was very unrealistic because his friend put an ad in on Craigslist. Not the fact that he was Sasquatch. And I'm like, it is clearly humorous. It's clearly highly fictional. And it's, but it shows that, you can't predict your readers, and you have to understand who your ideal reader was, right? Like when you take workshops or consult with marketers, they tell you have to identify Joe Blow, your reader, and what did that person look like. And that's the person you're going to double down on and pitch and market and cater to, because that's the person who will get your book the most. So yes, when you're reading reviews, be careful. Not everyone is Joe Blow, the reader you intended for, and you have to know how to read those out, and don't let your feelings get hurt. Just like you were also mentioning that your husband doesn't hold back on those first edits. Don't let your feelings get hurt, because a good editor will be very frank with you like that. And I think that goes back to saying that just to be an author, someone has to have thick skin.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I agree completely. If you don't have thick skin, this is not the business you need to be in. That's for sure. That's definitely. My last edit came back from the editor, and he wrote like I think it was 24-page editorial letter. And he says, I've never done this in all the years I've had. He says, but I like the story. I really think it's going someplace, but you just have changed genres. And but although I was upset at some of the stuff I read, the fact that he took that kind of time, that he believes in the story that much, and he doesn't want to see me finish it, that meant something to me. And that's what I focused on, versus like all those pages of, what I did wrong.
And that's a good point, especially when you switch genres. What worked for one is not going to necessarily work for the other. And an editor can definitely help you fine tune, identify where you have to make that shift.
Yes, exactly.
Because we talk about it all the time. People are like, oh, what do you write? I have 3 pen names, but essentially at the core, I write the same thing. And they're all fantasy, creature, romance, paranormal romance type stuff. Mm-hmm. But if I ever had to sit down and write mystery thriller, I don't think I could. I really don't think I ever could.
Well, and it's the same thing with me. In my first book, I don't know why, I kind of thought I needed some sex scenes in there, but I put some sex scenes. And first of all, my husband came back and said, these are terrible. They make me cringe. They're so bad, and I was like, thought he was just being harsh and that he wasn't right. So that was one of the things that I kind of thought, oh no, I'm leaving that in. I think it's right. So I sent it off to the editor, and the editor comes back and was like, oh my, they have got to go. And it's, you should never, ever write a sex scene. You can't write sex scenes. And so, that's my weakness. I am not going to try. Leave that to the people that can write sex scenes. I will stick with them with the thriller.
We talk about it all the time. It's sort of like a battle scene. We have to count where the limbs and the legs are. Sometimes we have to draw little stick figures. Sometimes we get, I have kids, so I'm like, action figures, where are they? I need these.
Yeah. So I'll leave that to the professionals. I won't attempt it anymore. I learned my lesson.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, that is hysterical though, because it is true. We all have things that we're phenomenal at, and then we have things that it's like, this is cute, little pat on the head. Can you not go into this arena anymore, or go take some classes in this arena and then come back? Because,
Well, mine was more like, this scene made me not want to have sex ever. So it wasn't even a cute pat on the head. It was get rid of it.
Wow. Well, that was abrupt.
Yes, I can't write a sex scene, and I'm not going to ever try again.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical. Okay, we are getting to the end of this podcast. I cannot believe it. So let's go to shameless self-promotion, my friend. Where can people find you and your books?
Well, any bookstore can order my books, but I'm also on Amazon, and they're in paperback, they're in ebook, and they're also audiobook. I have the same narrator did all three, and they're wonderful audiobooks if anybody's into the audiobooks. Kate Marson was my narrator. She did just a fantastic job. She reads way better than I could ever read the parts.
Very
So,
cool.
they're on Amazon. Any bookstore can order them. Barnes and Noble. Sometimes they'll carry them, and sometimes you have to order them, but they can get them pretty easily. My website, if anybody's interested in some of the backstories on things, it's DanaRidenour.net. So they're welcome to go to the website. If anybody has any questions about the FBI or writing, you talked about earlier, some research, I'm happy to answer questions. I get authors contacting me all the time that said, hey, would an FBI agent do this? Or what's the rank structure in the FBI? Just little things like that. I am happy to answer any questions about the FBI. So, they can go to my website. And
just so you know, you just round yourself up with me on that.
I got your number.
I was like sending an email now.
That's fine. I am serious. I love helping writers. So I've had so many writers help me, and I really believe in writers helping writers and paying it forward. So I don't mind one bit. I know people say that all the time, but I really don't mind. Now, I don't want to read somebody's manuscript. I'll say that. Unless it's really good.
But I think it's good because, I have friends that were former CIA agents and CIA agents. I can say all these words. Thank you, Kalua. But, reaching out to go, is this because when it's not accurate, if it's not important, it's great. But if you're saying this, and this happened, and it's not how that works, and I'm not saying you have to have the procedural guide, but if it doesn't make sense, the reader gets thrown out of the story and goes, wait, that would never happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's great to have experts that can answer questions. So that's fabulous that you do that. Dana, you've been so much fun to have on this podcast. You are brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you. I've had a ball, and the more we drink, the more fun it gets, right?
Exactly. Just wait for the next episode.
Well, I have to be careful because my husband says wine is truth serum for me. So,
oh,
so I have to be careful what questions come out at the end after I've had enough to
Don't do
drink.
like I do, because I'm the same way, and then I start shoving food in my mouth because I can't stop, and I can't stop saying the answer, but I can block it with food, and
it's terrible. Well, we've also discovered that champagne is not Val's friend.
no.
Apparently, Val gets super drunk on champagne. She did that on the last podcast. She can have a Bailey's with coffee. You see, she's
I
not.
couldn't stand. It was terrible.
She had 2 glasses, by the way, and was basically on the floor. It was pretty.
Oh, I tell you, I'm the same way though. I'm a lightweight as well. 2 glasses for me, and I will probably say or do anything. So.
See, me on the other hand, I'm like, bring on the Bellinis. Just kidding. Okay, guys, this has been Drinking with Authors. I have been your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today has been the not as drunk as she was last time, Valerie Willis.
And our guest has been Dana. Like, subscribe, and share.
Okay, she totally forgot her script.
Totally,
This is so the Baileys
I
did
need
kick
to
in,
write this
so.
down. I get it wrong every time.
So don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. And we will see you guys next time.